Greetings, I'm Barrett and welcome to Meet Me at the Table. Today we're going to be continuing our playthrough of Aeon Trespass Odyssey. This is an immense campaign game and I'm super excited to continue this adventure. We did a tutorial fight against a primordial and in the video there were a few errors and I want to talk about them, but I am going to do that when the next week meet a primordial. For now we're going to continue into the journey phase of this. We're going to be going through the tutorial voyage area that is going to take our ship that I got all painted up here and ready to go. We're going to take him on a massive little voyage around the sea, I guess you could say, and we're going to see what happens to him. There are a couple things I want to mention that are going to make a difference when it comes to the voyage part of the game. First off, it is confirmed that at the end of the tutorial you still get to claim the resources even though you're supposed to multiply the resources by the level of the primordial fight, and the level of our primordial was 0. So that technically should mean I get 0, but it is confirmed you actually do get those resources, and one of the resources I wrote down was this one. I wrote it up here. The symbols look very similar to this. I was supposed to get 4 raw ambrosia instead of this up here. We do have 2 of these muscle clusters, and the reason that matters is because these you normally get from fighting different primordials most of the time, and these you're going to get going through and exploring and doing some adventures and things like that more often than not. Of course that's not always going to be the case, but I just wanted you to be sure to know that that was one of the mistakes I did at the end of the last video that will make a difference during this voyage. Now if you're excited to continue our adventure through Aeon Trespass Odyssey, then I need you to meet me at the table. As we move through the world of Aeon Trespass Odyssey, we're going to be met with different story moments that are going to shape the way our journey unfolds. The first one we have here is called an Odyssey Resumed, and I will already apologize right now. There are going to be a lot of words that are names that are not very familiar to myself, and I'm going to do my very best to pronounce them, but I guarantee you I'll pronounce most of them wrong, so please bear with me. I apologize in advance. You emerge from the pools of the Balonian, deeply exhausted and confused. What was that thing? How did you know how to control the Titans? There are not enough answers in the world to satiate your thirst, says the old priest. But I will tell you what I know, and you can do with it as you please. We call this ship the Argo, though we do not know its true name. It lay moored off the west coast of the Canefelian for many years. Like a beached whale, refugees and outcasts flocked to it, looking for shelter from the harsh reality of post-Ecton Helios. Adventurers and pirates were drawn to it by the promise of hidden treasure. Deserters and fugitives hid on it. As he speaks, he has a meaningful look on his face. We explored it. We charted it. We learned some of its many secrets. We thought we were mastering it, but in truth, it was the ship that was training us. Unknowingly, we were becoming its crew. Your crew. I feel like the 100. One crew! It says here, yours? One of you asked, confounded. You are not like us. You did not walk on board the Argo, my friends. You were found here in a sleepless sleep, he explains. And when doom loomed, you awakened, and as did the Argo. Hecton's attack! No, the priest interrupts you. He does not want any confusion on the matter. A much more terrible foe awaits thee. It pursued us on moth's wings across the great sea, like the messenger Hermes himself. For now we've evaded it, but at most terrible cost. You are not the first Argonauts to awaken from the sleep, nor the first to don the bodies of Titans. Your predecessors were, and not as fortunate as you. Do not sadden, O Argonauts. Their sacrifice made today's victory possible. We understand the Balian a lot better now. We understand the Triskelion that allows you to junction with the Titans in time. We will master it. You call us Argonauts, yet you remember nothing? You say with great trepidation. I know that I know nothing, said a great mortal once. Make that your creed, and you will not be disappointed, chuckles the wizened man. Maybe the ship will reveal the truth to us, if we live long enough. There are more pressing matters at hand. He gestures to the colossal, poorly lit chamber you've just entered. You've been so engrossed in the conversation you didn't even notice you've arrived at your destination. Another man is there, dark of skin, with a bushy beard and a hard steel look in his eyes. The chief smith of the Apoliel engine room, Alcibiades. The ship's been steering itself this whole time, he says. We think it's looking for sustenance. Tremuris, need wind, or the toil of mortal muscle. This ship longs for a different fuel, a black fluid, the same that coursed through the veins of the monstrosity you've slain. Ambrosia. If our understanding of these apparatuses is correct, we're running on empty. The Hecaton gave us a few days of voyage, a week tops, but that's that. There's supposed to be an island to the east, injects the old priest. A ravenous sea empire made toothless by a young and a ball of yarn. Even the toothless wolves bite, says one of you absentmindedly. It's that or Poseidon's watery grave. Take your pick. That's hardly a choice, is it? Before we move to the actual traveling through on the voyage phase, I do want to just take a moment to recognize our characters again here. We have Penelope, we have Telemachus, and remember, each one of these has a ability here, or a little stat, I should say. So hers is will, his is endurance. And do note that I put all of our dials back to 0. You're supposed to start at 0 after you finish off a big combat most of the time. Of course, that's the normal. There could be things, of course, in the game that are going to change that as we play through it. And do know that you could use these as save sheets as well, because you have these little things up here where you could write down what these dials have on them before you move into an encounter. So you could play like through the voyage stage till you get to an encounter, pause at that point, write down your dials, and move into the combat after you get through the voyage stuff, which is probably a lot of what I'm going to do. Also, once I'm done with the tutorial, we will be continuing playing this game. I'd like to continue to go further to see what unfolds after the tutorial is done. So stay tuned for more videos after this tutorial is completed. If you found the video over on One Stop Co-op Shop, do know that the tutorial is all that's going to be done on that channel, but you can check out the rest of this playthrough over on my channel, Meet Me at the Table. I'm going to put a link to it in the description of this video, so go ahead, jump over there, and you'll be able to continue the adventure with us. These are our other two Argonauts that we have. We have Roz and Olympia. Roz has a lot of courage and Olympia has fury. I gave Roz the new weapon we got at the end of the fight. Most likely, I believe you'd have to give these to people as you're going through, because as you go through the story or the journey, something may have to do with certain characters that you may choose or have to do randomly, and that way you have the equipment that those characters would specifically have. Normally, as you play through the game, you're going to be given different story cards and doom cards that you're going to have to fulfill as you go through the game. But in this tutorial, the only thing we're supposed to do is, of course, our Argos needs fuel. So we have to try to find a place to get fuel. That's really the only goal of this tutorial. So let's see if we can reach the shore before we run out of fuel. Now, there are going to be, starting with the timeline, and we're going to be looking at our tile, and we're going to be using our little boat to maneuver ourselves around. The first step of the voyage phase is you're going to move the Argos. Well, as you can tell here, there's no place to move it. So we're going to consider flipping this tile and putting the Argos on top of it as its movement. And these are the tiles, and these are the thicker tiles. These are from the Wave 1 expansion tile set that I have, and they did actually come with the tutorial set, so it does come with every one of the ones that you'd normally get in the game as cards. They come as these thicker cardboard. They look pretty cool. They have the same art on them, so there's no difference there. It's just that they're a little bit thicker and actually sit on the board kind of nice. They're pretty cool. A little bit of an upgrade there. Kind of neat. But as you can see here, it's just a bunch of jagged rocks and bad stuff everywhere. There's nothing exciting on this tile. We're going to place this here. And if anybody's ever played an adventure game similar to like the Seventh Continent, you're going to see this symbol over here, and that's going to be kind of, and you're going to see them on all the corners, and there's going to be different things on these tiles themselves. That's going to be how you move your ship around during the voyage step. Also, there may even be hidden numbers and stuff they say on this, but that's really rare and not something you should be looking for all the time, but they do have that aspect in this game from what I understand. Once you move the ship, you're going to come to this massive piece of paper here, which is our voyage timeline. There's a lot of things going on this, but for right now, the only thing we need to do is mark down right up here that we were able to move the Argos, and we've filled in our first box on the timesheet. And as you can see, this timesheet is massive. There's a lot of things going on it. On top of that, you can write things in on these different timelines that may happen to you, or being able to help recharge certain events or items or abilities that you have on your Titans, or different stories will tell you to put down things like 3 days later or things of that nature. Do be aware though, there are 80 days on this, and even though that looks like a lot of time, if you're not able to complete the adventure by day 80, that is considered a lose condition. What you're seeing over here in the choice matrix, that's going to be things that are going to appear in different story moments. It'll say like, oh, tick off A1, and then maybe somewhere down the line, half of like down in this area after you used it up here or something, it may say, do you have A1 checked off? Yes, then go to this and such and of that nature. So your past choices will make a difference as you play through this game. A few other things we have to set in motion here. First, we have to get our hull and crew. If either of these get to 0, this is kind of the lifeblood of our Argos is our hull and crew. We have to read these certain passages out of the storybook. I'm going to guess they're not ideal for any type of situations at all. You can also save your game at any time, and you can write down what story card and how many progress tokens you have, and also the doom card and any doom you have on that card. Therefore, you can jump back into the game when you want to. So the only thing here we need to make sure we know is that we do have this 4 hull and 4 crew for our Argos. The other thing that we're going to be doing during this tutorial is we're going to be adding certain story moments on here. The first one we have is Fearful Recollection, and we're going to put that on 3 years from now. And so you're going to count not from where you are, but from moving forward. So 1, 2, 3. At T3, we're going to have to deal with this particular story event. The final thing we're going to do is gain our first technology. It's called Primordial Dawn here. It's going to be our Bridge of Thelios. And on the back here it says, not much is known about Estission, except that it brought the fall of Olympus and the coming of the Primordials. Now notice here there's no requirements, and it doesn't lead to anything. Certain technologies need certain requirements, as you can tell, and they will, once you unlearn them, you're going to be able to lead to other ones that you're going to add to your technology deck. We're going to flip this over. This particular technology really isn't a technology. You're not learning anything except for the rules of the game, which I guess in essence is something for sure to learn. It says, from here the Argonauts shape their fate and steer the mighty Argo towards the unknown destination. And there's a bunch of tags here, but really sail and explore is one of them. The reference here states, at the start of each day you move to an adjacent tile using one of the available waterways. If needed, place the tile, then move the Argo and proceed to the timeline step. We've already done this, and I'm surprised it doesn't tell us to take this first and then do the other things, but that's basically the first part of what you do every turn, as you already saw me do. The next thing says adventure. Reference, during the adventure step, if the Argo is on an unexplored map tile with this particular symbol, then you're going to go to an adventure hub table in your current cycle storybook, and I'll explain that shortly. The last one says gather resources. It's another reference. It says during the exploration step, after resolving exploration symbols, draw and resolve 2 stacks of exploration cards. And again, I'll go over that as we continue through this first stage of the game. But for now, in this particular day, the only one we're worrying about is this sail and explore, which is what we already did. With our first day completed, we're going to move into the second one. So we're going to do the first thing that is part of our mission. We are going to move the Argos. So we're going to take our tile, which is T1. Normally you can move in multiple directions, but there's an interesting concept when it comes to moving. One thing that is not going to be explained during the tutorial, but is still part of this game, is some of these will even have alpha and beta symbols. So that means like you might be going around a, what do you call it, a big island or something, and if you choose the alpha symbol, you'll be moving onto this tile, but only onto this side. And this whole thing might be split in 2 by land, let's say, and the beta side would be down here. And if you continue, you can only move through the alpha. You can't move across the land. You're in a boat, so there's no way you can get across. Of course, certain technologies or story modes might allow you to do that, but when you're originally starting the game, just be aware that that is part of the game, and it's actually, I think, kind of cool that you're not just going to go from tile to tile and every tile is going to be able to be moved to. You might only be able to move to certain parts of the tile. tile, which is also really neat. At this point, though, we're going to flip over our next tile and move the Argos. Let's see what our Argos tile, or a tile, holds for our Argos here. As you can see, we have some shells down here. We have some boats and stuff up here, it looks like. And we're still in the water, so we're going to place this down right here. There is the symbol for a particular adventure right there. We will move our Argos over there. You always have to move every turn. You can never anchor the Argo into a tile. You have to move every turn. That does mean you could move back if you want, but moving forward is usually a better plan if you're trying to complete a story. At least that's how I've learned in my gaming days. Though there might be certain, again, technologies or events that will allow you to moor or anchor your Argos, but at the beginning of the game there isn't anything like that. You always have to move your Argos. After moving the Argos, we are going to scratch off our next time slot here. That is the next thing we do, and now we'll move into the next step of our adventure phase here. The symbol of the adventure on our tile means we're going to have to deal with one of the adventure tracks. The adventure tracks we're on right now, of course, is the tutorial one. So again, we're going to check off that we're going to be doing this one. Notice it has an alpha symbol. This is an omega symbol over here. That will change what could potentially be that story in that particular group of story areas here. Though for this particular one, everything, of course, is in the book that we're going to go read, and they'll tell us what we're going to do. But sometimes you'll be rolling on a table, and you're going to consult particular ones based on the table roll you have. So your adventure is going to be different almost every time you play because you'll be rolling differently on the adventure tables. And if you do roll a double or something you've already seen, I believe you re-roll that one. So you're never going to have to keep dealing with the same adventure. You're always going to have different adventures as you play through it. And every adventure is going to have a particular good choice, bad choice, or there might both be bad, they both might be good. It's all depending on how you perceive how your characters and your Argos, or how exactly your faction is going to play through the game. There's not really always a right and wrong answer to each of the way these stories play out. Our particular adventure is called Sea of Shipwrecks. It states, you wake up to the sound of alarm bells. Cold chills run down your spine. Has the monster returned? Are you to do battle again? When you get to the deck, the old priest has already there, pointing ahead. Before the Argo lies a sea of shipwrecks, mighty tremors broken in two or smashed into tiny unrecognizable pieces drifting. It's impossible to discern to whom the armada belonged to. The Argo can plow through the watery graveyard, go around it, or stop to look for survivors and supplies. You are in command now, muses the old priest. But if it was me, I'd prepare the launchers to look for anything useful. You get to the boats with your newfound crew and set off for the wrecks. It's as if something massive tore these ships asunder. Some of the larger war streams show signs of precise piercing damage. What could punch through a bronze-plated hull that came out in the other side? Perhaps there really are worse things than hecatons out there. At this time, we have to choose one of you to be the party leader. They break ties if you can't reach a decision. Then choose. So we could pretty much choose whoever we want to because we're playing by ourselves. But if you are playing with multiple people, you're going to want to choose a leader so that they'll have that ability to kind of think for the group if everybody can't make a decision. But how often does that ever happen in a co-op game? So we're going to, well, you know, she's got the weapons. She's going to be our party leader. She's the only one with a weapon. This is Roz. She's got the courage to step up and be our party leader. That's the deal. So she's going to make all the decisions. It says, I have to choose. 1, this place is a maze of shipwrecks. Foul things may lurk about. You decide it's better to lead the Argo in closer, as it should scare off any predators. This turns out great for the crew, not so much for the ship's hull. If we choose that, we're going to lose 1 hull, and we'll note that on the Argo sheet. We'll mark A7 in the choice matrix. So there again, we see that even though we're seeing the outcomes of these, we're not going to see the long-term ramifications of what our decisions are, which is pretty cool. The second one says these wrecks could still pose a threat to the Argo. It pains you to even think it, but the crew is replaceable. The ship is not. Consequently, many sailors fall prey to the mollusks, sirens, and sharks. We'll lose 1 crew. We'll note that on the Argo sheet, mark for A8. in the choice matrix. This is a hard choice, but I'm going to let Roz go ahead and answer the choice. Oh, I'm totally thinking we're going with 2. All right, so we're going to choose number 2. That was her choice. And we're going to mark 8 on our choice matrix, the sheet that we have right here. We're just going to mark that to show that we have marked this. We've decided that was our choice. Then, of course, we are going to lose 1 crew, so we are now down to 4 crew member instead of 5. It does say, regardless of your choice, on the way back you make a startling discovery. In the cargo hold of one of the large triomers is in large iron caskets, you find titans, weak, incapacitated, but alive. Raise the number of titans you have to 8, regardless of how many you had before. So that's awesome. No matter how many lost during the intro fight, we start with 8. You also gather enough raw materials to gain 1 sailor spoilers, 1 siren Pinelli armor, and a boat mace gear card. Finally, gain the Titan Stoa and Excursion Polyon oversized technology cards. Then return to the voyage phase. And if you, as you notice here, if you're interested in reading deeper into the rules, you can find that on page 36, Returning to the Voyage. First, we got some cool new armor and weapons. The first one is our Siren, Penelope armor here. It's got the shell tag down here. It does have an ability here. I can use a fate to reinforce 1, which means that when I'm about to resolve an armor roll, I can add X amount of dice, where X is the number, so 1 die to my armor pool, which is pretty sweet. She's got a lot of will. I'm going to give it to her. She's going to get a piece of armor here. And the next one we got is the Sailor Polas, which is this one right here. This one is going to give us +1 courage straight up. Now, he's got endurance, so I thought I'd give it to him just to kind of help spread out some of the abilities here. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I should give 1 power ball onto 1 person. Now, as you can see here, I can spend a fate on this one to give myself a second chance. So whenever you draw a fate card, or sorry, a trauma card or an Apollo card, you can discard it and immediately draw another one of the same type, but you have to keep that card. Now, whenever you draw those Apollo cards, which are the ones that could potentially kill you, you do shuffle that one back into the deck, where the other one you're just going to discard. So he's got that. I'm going to give that to him. Then he's also going to gain that +1 to courage, so we're going to give him +1 courage. Now, if he ever loses this, I'm going to lose that courage. It doesn't just stay there forever anymore. The final item I got is a boat mace. This only can roll 1 die, but it gets +2, and check it out. I get to roll 2 dice with this. This is amazing. Now, notice it is only one-handed, so that means that I could also still use my fists if I wanted to, but of course, they're only going to be able to roll 1 dice instead of 2 because of the ability down here, using only as 1 is -1. So I'd be rolling 2 dice still, but I get +2 to this one and not to this one. So there's still a potential to do a lot of damage with these. So I'm going to give this to her, since this person already has this weapon here. And besides, she's full of fury. Why not? Now, it does have a ability down here called Break 1. So during my second window, I can add a break token because of this item, which is pretty sweet. So on top of anything I would get from the Rage, I'm also going to get the break token from my mace. Super, super cool. Now, before we move on, I do want to mention one more thing on both of these. I do have to gain that fate, and if you cannot abide by the cost of a certain weapon or ability or anything, you can't use it. So if you're already at, for example, 9 fate, you couldn't use this because you can't go above that number. Now, of course, if that number ever drops, you can go ahead and start using the items again. And on top of that, we're going to gain 2 more core technologies. The core technologies are usually your base technologies you're going to get when you start one of the different cycles in Aeon Trespass. And again, these core ones are going to lead to some other technologies. We're going to deal with that in the future. As you can see it right here, it says it's going to lead to these, but we'll worry about that in the future. First, let's deal with what is on this card. It does say there are a lot we do not know about the Treskelian Junction used in the process of suppressing the atavistic nature of the Titans. We need to know more. So if we flip this, this is the technology we're going to learn. Our excursion propylon. It says here the Argonauts ready for the next excursion, and it also here that a support team stands ready to lend their help. And as you can see, it's got a couple tags, Argo, support, and ones. I believe the 1 is a cycle, or it could just be the first part of this particular type of card. It says here, permanent. Argo ability, which is AA, the limit is going to be 2. Remember when we did our primordial fight and there was a part of the board that had Argo abilities? We're able to bring 2 at the max right now of those particular abilities to the battle. As you go through your technologies and the stories, you're going to be able to gain more of those depending on which trees or story moments you go through as you progress through the game, which is pretty sweet. Now, of course, we don't have any right now, but I'm sure we'll probably get some pretty soon here. You can choose up to 2 Argo abilities to repair. You may use those cards in the battle. So that's our first technology card. I'm going to put that to the side. Do remember that we're going to gain some leads later on. That's not going to be part of this particular day, but soon we will. The next one we have is this one. It's Titanogenesis. It's another core technology. Since they're normally on the bigger cards here, it says, "They are mystery to us, mindless and extremely violent in the wild. They would be mortal kind, greatest enemy, had it not been for the Eshtikon. Now there are best hope for the future." So the Titans are kind of our heroes right now, though they normally probably wouldn't be. It does say I can leads to Titan hunting, so that's something that we'll be looking forward to in the future. But for now, we're just going to flip the card and read what it says here. It says Titan Stoa. It's a voyage technology here, and it states here the Titans are tamed and stored when not in use. Some call this place a warehouse, some call it a prison. So we can, there's some more tags for gain Titans here. Reference during the exploration step, if the Argo is on an unexplored map tile with this particular symbol, we're able to gain 1 Titan. Also down here, we have a max capacity. The Titan limit right now is 10. You cannot gain Titans if they would exceed this limit. Right now, we have 8 according to our latest story, so we can only gain 2 more. So, but if we lose some, that'll be good. We can gain some more. It's not that bad. I mean, I'm sure those are gonna. I'm sure that's gonna be like water, just like when you're playing Kingdom Death Monster. Your survivors are pretty much water. They just kind of go in and out and die a lot and come back to life, and it's just a ton of fun. Then this game is equally awesome. So we have 10 at our limit. Right now, we have 8. Before we move into the next round, we would normally build our decks and go on with other parts of it, but we're slowly being introduced to the way this goes. And remember when we read our story moment, it did mention that we had to return to the voyage phase. And that is going to encompass everything that is not the adventure phase or the battle phase. And some of the technologies and some of our items and things can only be used during certain parts. May it be during the adventure phase, maybe during the voyage, or even during the battle phase. There's only certain times that certain abilities and items could be used during the game. So just keep that in mind and pay attention to when these certain things can be used. We're going to move into the next day, but before I do, I just still want to make sure you understand that once we get done with everything that's pre-scripted here, this is going to become one big giant narrative as it goes forward. It's not going to have these staged story moments. They're going to be part of what is going on in the world. But for now, we're going to continue on to see how this all transpired to get us to the point where Aeon Trespass Odyssey is going to become our campaign. It says, late at night, you sit around the changing map of the bridge Thalos, debating your next move. The old priest arrives with a stranger in tow. "I am Socrates, the war philosopher, and I come with a warning. Titans are not your friends. They are wild animals and enemies of mortals. Only through the Actikros technology can we tame and control them. It's in the helms, you see. Helms and words. We need to suppress their inner rage and destructive tendencies. The Kratos, so to speak. But there were only 4 helmets, and each time you do battle, you risk damaging one beyond repair. We need to make more. I need only your permission to start work immediately." How did you come upon this knowledge? The old priest smiles. "Just what I had in mind." And again, like I've been saying, it is kind of a pre-scripted event because a lot of the story stuff should be coming up kind of during a different part of the round after we continue on. And as we get to the very end of this campaign tutorial area, you'll see how each one of these stages do actually make sense. But right now, we're just kind of fitting them in so that we're learning them piece by piece, just so everybody understands exactly how this game will be played once we get to the next video. Once we get there, this is going to be just this huge, open, expansive environment that we're going to be able to travel. We're going to be able to experience all these adventures, these campaign narratives. It's going to be fantastic. Super excited for it. But let's continue on with the rest of the tutorial. Just like it showed, we're going to place our next tile right here and move on into it. Still a lot of shipwrecks and another adventure that we have right up there. But before we do, we are going to mark off T2, and as you can see, we have a new symbol here that we're going to deal with. That's going to be our technology, which is either going to be battle technology, which are these like darker ones that are supposed to kind of look like fists, or we have our structural technologies that look like this. Those are going to be more for diplomacy and things you're going to be doing during the adventure phase more often than not. But for now, we're going to ignore this symbol. We are going to get to it during this, but first, we're going to take a look at that adventure. Vast spaces. Choose a party leader and continue. Well, we already got Ra as the party leader. We're going to keep her that. I think this will be pretty awesome. The Argo mystifies you. An iron ship that does not sink and that sails on invisible winds. It is magic, the kind that Hephaestus might conjured up in his forge. But the gods are long dead, and the grand forges of Olympus cold as Kyotos itself. When you go below deck, you find vast spaces that could house a fleet of terrarium, or even a city. Some of the sailors, along with Alcibiades smiths, set up a makeshift ship-breaking yard. They took some of those shipwrecks you encountered yesterday and began salvaging materials for weapons, giant weapons for the Titans. As you inspect the salvage, you learn that, unfortunately, you've also taken a stowaway. A rabid siren, half mortal, half mollusk, all the hunger. Defend yourself. So at this point, we're going to be doing a skill test. So if you want to, you can read in your instruction book on page 37 to show how skill tests and everything goes. It's under test skills and Trixcolian gains. Then choose. 1. It's only the 4 of you, so you need to engage the siren as 1. That way, even though you risk more of you getting hurt, you will spread the punishment among you. Each Argonaut tests Fury or Endurance at a 7+. If you fail, you're going to gain 1 danger. The second option is it's only the 4 of you, so 1 of you needs to step up and hold the creature off, while the rest scramble for reinforcements. They may hurt you bad, but the damage will be contained. The party leader gains 2 danger. Regardless of your choice, see vast spaces continued in the next page. So we have to decide which one of these we're going to do. If you do decide to take the test, of course, you're going to be rolling against either Fury or Endurance, and all of our characters are going to do that. And we have 2 that actually do have 1 in Endurance and 1 in Fury, or we could nominate the party leader, which is Roz, to just take 2 danger. And again, like I said, if you want to test, all you have to do is roll a d10. If you get 7 or higher, you pass, and if you don't, you fail and gain that danger. So I could potentially take 4 danger or gain 2. We're going to go the easy route. Besides, Roz looks pretty tough. She looks pretty bonkers. She's pretty awesome there. She's going to take the 2 danger, going to 2. Now remember, this will persist into the next time we potentially do any types of battles or anything, or we might be able to lose some of this danger as we continue through the story. We're not exactly sure how life will all transpire. But if you ever do complete a battle, of course, all of these normally reset to 0 depending on how the outcome goes and depending on how the story goes. But more often than not, those will all get reset back to 0. So we've taken the 2 danger. Let's continue. Before we continue, there is one more thing I want to talk about. If we did decide to take the test, we are allowed to use our fate just like you would inside a battle and have to follow the normal rules of fate where you can't re-roll the die more than once. And you also, which I did wrong in my playthrough of the actual battle, have to decide how many dice you're going to use to re-roll before you re-roll them. You can't re-roll 1, look at what it is, use another fate to re-roll a different one. You have to decide before you re-roll any dice how many you're going to re-roll with the amount of fate you want to use. So just keep that in mind when it comes to skill checks. You can use fate to re-roll them if you want to. Moving on to the story. You managed to slay the rabid siren, but not without cost. Still, it had to be done to secure the space for Alcibiades' people, and those people have something to show for their efforts. Intact siege weapons salvaged from the wrecks of a few barrels of ambrosia, courtesy of the dead siren. Now you need to find a way of reshaping those materials into equipment that will give you a fighting chance against the primordials. You need knowledge. As you turn back to look at the scholars of the Argo and the old priest mentioned one of you lingers. A flicker of reconciliation flashes in their mind. This horrid encounter has stirred something in them, something from their veiled past. Gain 2 armament resources, 2 tremor resources, 6 raw ambrosia resources, a muscle cluster resource, and an infused mechanism resource. We're going to note those on the cargo hold. In your immediate future, you will use these resources to craft powerful weapons, armor support items, and more. There is a section during the journey phase where we're going to be crafting certain items, and we'll get to that step in this tutorial. But for now, just know we have all of these awesome resources. Also, it says here a random Argonaut is going to gain the Siren Survivor Memnos card. They should write it down in their Memnos section of their Argonaut sheet along with the passage number for their first breakthrough. And I'll talk about that in just a second because we got to figure out who that is. Then we're going to gain Last Academy Oversized Technology card. And finally, we will then return to the voyage phase. Here's our first Memnos card. It's Siren Survivor. Look, this person survived and don't know how. It says, against all odds you survived, but why? That's the picture right there. It's pretty cool. Now on the back, there is a ton of stuff going on here. First off, this is the cycle. So it's part of cycle 1. And when you receive a card, you get the level 1 ability. In order to get the level 2 ability, we have to go up in these nodes, which are gained through adventures or other things. Basically, off of our different tags on this, we might be able to unlock more of this card as we go on. And as we unlock more of the card, it's going to become more powerful for our character until we get to the very final one. And once we get through that, we have completed this Memnos card. And we're going to be given a special code that we're going to put into Catharsis, which I'll show you on our sheet in just a second. The reason I'm keeping it here is because you can barely make out these numbers. These are the numbers you're going to turn to. It's going to continue the story of this card for your particular character once you get the amount of nodes shown here. So once you get to 3, then 3 of these nodes, you're going to go to level 2, but also take a look at this story moment here. These are, I guess you could say, subdued memories or forgotten memories that your particular Argonaut has had. And on top of that, each one does come with a power that you can use. For example, this one, I can exhaust this card to discard a condition token, or I can discard the card in order to discard a condition card is what that symbol means there. I believe that's how it works. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments below. Of course, you can always find anything that I may have done wrong post-launch of this video in the comment section of this video as well, in case you're looking for whether or not something is correct or not. Also down here, you're seeing Courage and Will. Those we're going to get automatically once we gain this card. So we get Courage, Will, and on top of that, we're going to be able to take advantage of this level 1 skill. And as we gain nodes, we'll be able to unlock and learn more about this particular Siren Survivor that is our Argonaut. Now, you can only ever have 2 of these at any one time. Now, as we go through our adventure hub and we're able to gain some of these nodes, we may come across the fact that we have multiple of these cards that would be able to gain a node. You can only ever gain 1 from an adventure hub, and the one that is going to gain it would be the one that's the dominant one at the time, which is the one that, of course, has the most nodes at the time. So that's just a quick rundown of one of these cards. Let's go figure out who's going to get it. And to determine a random Argonaut in this game, we're going to roll dice, and the one with the lowest number is the one that's chosen. She got a 9, so it's probably not her. He got a 6, and we're going to roll for Roz right here. Roz got an 8, and Olympia got a 9. Wow, that's hilarious. 2 9s, an 8, and a 6. So this poor, well, I shouldn't say poor, he's going to gain some more benefits here. He is going to gain this particular Memnos, and he's going to write that right here. So we're going to write Siren Survivor here. Survivor. I need to make sure I can barely spell things right to begin with. And as you can see here, it shows you the nodes that you're going to be gaining, and then you're going to fill in these boxes. Then you're going to write in that code right there as you go. Now, of course, this also says I gain 1 courage. So he's up to 2 courage and 1 will. So wow, it's pretty cool. We're gaining some really neat skills as we go forward here. And then we're going to put the card to the side because, of course, I do have that power for that card as well. So we'll have to remember we have that as we go into the next battle or even for part of the journey phase. Here's the core technology that they were talking about. It says a fount of ancient knowledge, almost dried up now, contains enough information to allow us to mount a response to the primordials. It'll serve us well as the cornerstone of our research. And as it shows here, it does lead to rhetoric, so I'm sure we'll be getting that pretty soon. But first, let's take a look at Last Academy. It says here is the philosophers and academics construct their research poring over dusty tomes and faux scripture. I can barely read it. It says we have a research thing here. It's one of our reference cards. It says when you reach a combat or structural technology on the timeline, you can research one of the available technology cards from the corresponding project deck. So we're going to have to build that pretty soon. We can also gather information. During the exploration step, if the Argo is on an unexplored map with a progress symbol, I can gain 1 progress. And for each progress token you gain, place the token on your current story card or what's called the Inward Odyssey card. The Inward Odyssey card, from what I understand, is kind of the story of the Argo itself. So you're going to be able to go forward with the story, in which of course is going to be what wins you the game, or you could go forward with the Inward Odyssey card, which could tell you the story of the Argo and potentially unlock even more things that can benefit you in the story or any battles or things of that nature. So there's multiple paths to decide how you want to spend these tokens, which is really cool. It's not just they go to the story and you go and win. No, you can also choose to learn about your Argo and gain the knowledge and stuff there that's going to give you better technologies to hopefully be able to gain you more power to be able to take on the harder primordials and challenges you're going to face in the story. So it's kind of a give and take, because remember, if you don't complete the story, that's a potential area where you could start losing the game. So you have to decide what you want to do. But for now, we're going to just know that this is here, and we're going to set it to the side, and we're probably going to do some research, but we haven't had any chance here yet to gain any success tokens yet, so we'll not have to worry about that step at this moment. But we are on that part of the technology thing does show up on our timeline, so we are going to take advantage of that. Here we have our stack of technology cards. Now, they're a smaller card compared to the ones we've been looking at before, and that's not a mistake. These are, like I said before, our core technologies. A lot of these are gained at the beginning of the cycle so that you'll have access to some of these from their prerequisites. On top of that, it shows all the different parts that are kind of going on inside the Argo and kind of what's happening in the Argo is kind of how these core cards are built. Now, these are going to be cards that are going to help us out. Now, we could learn, for example, this Titan hunting, but we have to meet the prerequisites. We need Titan Genesis and Rhetoric. Now, we have the Titan Genesis, I believe, from a core technology. Yes, we do. It's right here. But I do not have the Rhetoric, so I cannot do that. And on top of that, when we looked at our timeline, it showed we could do a battle technology, but not a structural one. So this one we can't even do. Here's Rhetoric, which we could do if we have the prerequisite. We do Lost Academy. That's actually the one we were just looking at. And we have this one, but it needs Rhetoric, so we can't do that one either. So this might be the first structural one we try to learn. Now, we do have 2 different battle technologies, Triune Weapon and Tremere Armor, and both have the same prerequisite, which we already have through one of our core technologies. And it says here, conventional mortal scale weapons cannot penetrate the primordial's Aeon Trespass fields. We need to think bigger. I like that. Or the other one is the armor. It says we do not yet have facilities capable of creating armor that can withstand the primordial attack, but we have access to all these different war tremeres. So we have those possibilities. Now I'm going to put these to the side. We have to choose which one of these we want. Now, I know I could potentially construct both of them, but whenever you reach that point in the timeline, you can only choose to do one. So even if you have 4 or 5 different ones that you could do at one time because your prerequisites are already met, you could still only do one. So I think we're going to start with the armor. Now, interestingly enough, even though it doesn't show what you get until you flip it over, you do have access to look at these. You do not have to hide this information from yourself unless you want to. Maybe make it more exciting when you actually do decide to learn what is on the back of these cards. But it shows you everything you can craft now from these armor. I can either get the Sail Swallows or the Shipwreck Shields. And these are the requirements from the different materials that we have in the hold. And here's the weapons. So if we decide to do this one, these are the different weapons we could learn to use, or craft, I should say, from all the different requirements and all the different, resources that we have. We got resources in our boat. So right now we're going to learn this one though, and we're going to set that aside to know that we know that. And then we're going to keep this deck just like that, ready to go. Now, of course, when we did learn this, we're able to leads to to this ranged weapons card. So we're going to grab that one, which is right here. And now we can add this to this deck. And next time we come to a battle technology that we can learn, we could potentially learn this one. But we can't because, look, it needs both of those first. So we'll have to learn this one first. And then once we do that, this one gets the ability to be able to be learned once we continue to the third one in our timeline. So for the second one, we'll have to learn this, unless, of course, we get some other ones in some other way. You're not just going to gain them from the technology cards. You may gain them out in the world, going to certain areas, experiencing certain story moments. You may gain technology cards from those. But, of course, in order to learn them, you might have to have some prerequisites. And some of the prerequisites might even be actual places or primordials that you have to fight. So there's so many different ways that you're going to gain these technologies. It's super cool. But, of course, there's only a limited amount of them that you can learn based on your timeline. So, again, there's a moment here where you have to decide what kind of paths you're going to want to send your Titans down, or what paths you're going to want to learn the diplomacy portion of this game, which is going to be what a lot of these structural ones do. So it's really cool. It's a whole cool system and how this works. That brings us to the end of number 2, or day 2, I guess you could say. So we're going to go into our tutorial campaign round 3, Ashes of Alexandria. Contrary to what the war philosopher said, there were many books and scrolls on the Argo, a venerable library to rival that of Athens. But there was only one text that spoke of the Argo and its fabulous technology, the one Socrates dubbed the Last Tome. He believes it was taken from Alexandria just before the Eschaton happened, but this is just pure speculation. The Last Tome only has one page, but it keeps changing under the slightest of touches. This is the miracle of the Fausse Scripture. It also means you cannot be sure what knowledge and secrets it still holds. To learn the answer you don't know you need, you must figure out the right questions. And just so you have asked, the old priest has gathered the learned sages, philosophers, and scholars of the Argo, united in one purpose, to understand. They set up the aforementioned library and began their lives' work. That was the first day of the last Academy of Helios. So at this point, we're going to continue with our story, and the first thing we have to do is move. So we're going to move to our new tile, T03. We'll flip it over. Oh, look, we actually found a little island here. That's kind of cool. Again, more shipwrecks everywhere. And there's a new symbol right here. So we're going to take it, put it down, and move our Argo over to there. Now that particular symbol on that tile comes up in one of our cards. It's this one right here. It says, during the exploration step, if the Argo is on an unexplored map tile with this symbol, you can gain 1 Titan. So we're going to gain another Titan because this was an unexplored tile. Now if we ever move off the tile over here, something and come back, or go this way and come back, you can't keep replenishing this. It only happens the first time that you go onto the unexplored tile. With that Titan, we now have 9. We've come to a point where we actually now have at least a simplified version of the campaign round. We've already done our movement, so we finished that. We all now have to advance the timeline and trigger any map tile icon. So I should have done the timeline first before I gained that Titan, because something may happen on the timeline that we'd have to deal with. Then we have our expedition. If we're on a tile with an adventure, we're going to have to resolve that adventure. Then we're going to the encounter. If there's any timeline battles or battle events in the timeline, we'd resolve them. Once that's done, we'd go to our advancement, and if there's any of the structural or battle technology symbols in the timeline, at that point we'd be able to develop a new technology based on that. On top of that, we're also able to craft gear during that particular time. After that's completed, we then have our story, and if there are any story events on the timeline, we'd resolve them. So the second part would be to check off our next box. And notice there is going to be a battle technology here, and we do have a story moment, Fearful Recollection. But remember, this is a story moment, not an adventure. The adventure is going to come before that. So we'll have to resolve the adventure first, then the Fearful Recollection. Now remember, this tile doesn't actually have an adventure on it. It just had that symbol of being able to find a Titan. So we're going to skip that section. We're going to be able to then go to the encounter, and there are no battles according to this yet. There is going to be one down here, and then once that's done, we're going to be able to resolve new technologies. Now we kind of already know how that's going to go because we already talked about it. And since it's a battle technology, the only one we have is this one that we can learn, which is going to give us the ability to learn those ranged weapons as we go. And remember, on the back now, I can create boat mazes, Kratos Kopis, a siren blade, or a siren teeth. And of course, all those are going to cost certain resources in order to craft. And on top of that, now that we have that, we do have our new technology that we could learn if we decided to, called our ranged weapons, which we could do in the third time, which is going to be in T5. And at this time, during this advancement step, we could also craft some of this, but we're going to save that for later because I don't really think there's anything that we need to craft at this moment, but if we get closer to a battle, maybe that'd be a time you might want to think about it. So the next thing we would do is deal with our story moment, which is going to be our fearful recollection. You cannot sleep at night. Something is worming its way inside your mind. At first you think it's a memory of a recent battle, but no, it's deeper, older, a recollection. Of your previous life, you expect to see loved ones or even hated enemies. Instead, it's only drab, wet walls, damp dirt, and a tiny sunlight. Who are you? The least likely Argonaut gains the imprisonment Memnos card. To determine the least likely Argonaut, you're going to look at the Memnos cards and the Memnos nodes that those have had. The least likely Argonaut is the one with the least amount of cards. So we technically have 3 people that could be the least likely. It cannot be our one that has Siren Survivor. Now, if there's still a tie between everybody who has at least, let's say, 1 Memnos, say we all had 1 of those, you would then look to see how many nodes each of those players have, and the one with the least is going to be the most unlikely. Now, of course, if it's looking for the most notable or the strongest one, then you're going to look at the person who has the most Memnos cards or nodes. And of course, if there's ever a tie in any of this, we're going to choose randomly. So when it comes to figuring out who's going to get the imprisonment Memnos, we're going to have to choose randomly between the 3 we have left because they all don't have anything. So there's nothing to actually check on. So we again are going to take our dice and see if Roz is the most unlucky. That's a 3. We have a 3 over here. And then we have Penelope is also down there. She has an 8. So again, these 2 are going to roll off and see who's the most unlucky. It's going to be her. Olympia is going to gain that Memnos. So here is her card right here. It says, who can tell how long it's been? Dark, damp, and cramped and lonely. The cell gave you no quarters. Just a tiny crack in the wall. And we're going to see. Now, of course, he's going to have an ability. It says you may reduce suffered knockback by up to 2. So that's going to be pretty good. That'll help out quite a bit. Here are the keywords up here that are going to help gain some nodes. I do get +1 to endurance and +1 to wisdom. So we're going to make sure to write those down on her track here. She gets +1, what did I say, courage and, no, endurance and wisdom. So that's kind of nice. She's going to get some extra bonuses to those particular stats. And she gets that ability that she'll suffer 2 less for knockdown. Now, of course, as this powers up, she's going to gain some extra abilities here, such as you may reduce suffered pushback by 1, and then you may suffer knockback. You may lose 1 of your danger, which is pretty good. So she's going to be stopped being knocked around, according to this card, which is pretty neat. I guess being in prison, you're going to learn to stick up for yourself. Maybe, I don't know. Here you go. All right, let's continue on. With that story moment complete, we are moving into our 4th round of the tutorial. It says here, there are fortifications on the small rocky island, but they were abandoned long ago. Strange for a seafaring empire to leave its flank exposed like that. Thankfully, not far from the ruins, you find a tiny fishing village. The people there are more than eager to tell you what fate befell Crete. After you hear the tale, you begin to wonder if it was a good idea to come here. Then you remember, you didn't have a choice. We're going to continue our journey onto our next tile here, because the first thing you do is you move the Argos. So we're going to move over here. Oh, look, there is a tiny little village. That's pretty sweet. Oh, it does have some new things here. We have Doom and Progress tokens, and we have these little faction symbols that we're going to learn about, and a city symbol as well. So we're going to put these down here, and we're going to move our Argos right over to there, and then we're going to deal with this tile in the order which you would in the actual rounds of the game. Now that we moved, we are going to mark our next time on our time track here. We're at T4. Moving into the exploration step after we've done the timeline, we're going to have to deal with what is on the tile. So we're going to go with all the symbols on here. For example, the Doom and our Progress symbol. And we'd also do any of those Titan symbols if they were on there as well. But since there's a Doom symbol on there and we don't have a card, here is our card. It's called Shape of Things to Come. Let's quickly go ahead and read that. Shape of Things to Come. All is not well in Crete. In the absence of Minos, dissent grows. The understaffed, honored guard struggles to keep the peace after years of oppressive rule. In dawn's gray mist, primordial silhouettes are seen cresting the mountain ranges, too far to be a threat, too close to completely expel them from the mind. You start to notice strange geometric graffiti adorning the walls of the abandoned temples. You hear whispers of change coming from inland. Doom cards have rules and kind of some story that goes along with them. These are the bad things. You don't want these to happen. This one says, when the Argonauts gain a maze-touched affliction, place a Doom token on this card, but you only do it once per campaign. Gaining Doom makes your journey harder and brings it closer to a gruesome end. Each time you gain Doom, you must place one Doom token on your current Doom card, which in that case is this one right here. When there are 5 or more Doom tokens on this particular card, you're going to flip it to side B, but any excess tokens are going to continue on to side B. Here are the Doom tokens. We're going to place one right here on the card. Now remember, this will potentially carry over if we do have to flip the card. If there are 5 or more, we're going to flip the card to place any excess on the other side. And you can gain Doom from walking into a tile that has a Doom symbol. And unlike any of the other things we've talked about, if you leave this tile and come back to this tile, you're going to gain that again. It's one of the only things you're going to gain if you return to an already looked at tile is Doom token. So Doom, bad. And on the flip side, progress, good. Progress, good. Progress is going to help you complete your story. Now, we don't have a story card out here, but we do have this Inward Odyssey, Truth of the Labyrinth I was told to grab. This is the one that's going to help us learn about the Argos as we gain knowledge inside the Argos. So let's take a look at over here and read what it says. Inward Odyssey, Truth of the Labyrinth. You know precious little about the grand vessel you call home. Who built it? For what purpose? How did you come to be aboard? There are vast spaces below deck, more than should be possible, even taking into account the massive size of the ship. Each day brings new discovery, a new secret to be unveiled, and your Inward Odyssey has just begun. So much like the Doom card, this one also has some rules. When there are 2 progress tokens on this card, you're going to discard them and gain 1 Argos knowledge. And when you reach a given knowledge level during the story step, after all the story events resolve the corresponding Inward Odyssey adventure. And the first one you would do would be Endless Decks. Of course, we only have 1 progress right now, so we're going to put it right here on this card. We don't have 2, so we can't continue forward with this yet, but who knows, maybe we'll get some more pretty soon. Before we move into the next day, our board is slowly becoming alive. Look at this. We now have our cards ready to go that have both our Doom and, I guess it's kind of our story, but it's not really a story right now. We have our technology decks and then all the things we've learned so far over here, and our characters are off to the side, and we have our traveling boat going across the waterways here. This is pretty sweet. I'm excited how this game is starting to just grow onto the table. It's really super cool, and I'm excited to see how much more it's going to grow. Tread lightly on their dreams is the next section we're going to move into. This is our tutorial campaign, round 5. It says, from what the fishers told you, you have already crossed into the domain of Minos. Yet there are no tremors flying the sails of the bull, no outposts to greet you. Time seems to slow down to a crawl, and you begin to doubt yourself. What are you even doing here on this weird ship full of strangers with no hint who you are or what you're supposed to do? Adrift, anxiety begins to creep in. Looking at this tile, we can either travel this way or that way, and we're going to be either exposing tile number 5 or tile number 6. I'm afraid if we keep going this way, we're going to run into my cards over here. So we're going to go down. We're just going to move into T06. We're going to take our tile, flip it over, and see what we have found. Well, we found some ships, and there's going to be an adventure on this tile. And we also have a faction, which we might be learning about soon. And then, of course, we still have all those wreckages out here as well. And then it's going to go over to T27 at one point. Of course, that is the first thing we do during our beginning of our journey phase is we're going to move our Argos. So we've done that. Continuing down our track, we're going to move into our crossing off of our time. So we're at T5. And look, we are going to have a technology advancement. Looking back on the tile that we just visited, we're going to be placing down this token, which will symbolize that this is the last city we visited. Remember, every turn, like I said, we have to move our Argus. And when we do, we have to place tokens down on the place that we were that had one of these symbols on it so that you can't continue to go back to that one back and forth to use negotiation technologies. Now, of course, we don't have any negotiation technologies right now, so it's not really playing a part in this particular tutorial. But once the main game starts, if you, for example, did anything here with your technologies and learned something or did anything else, then you move down here. If you move back up here, which I don't know why you would, get more doom, but that's beyond the point. You're not able to just keep going back and forth to keep experiencing all the things until you visit at least one other city. And notice there is not going to be a city on this tile down here, so we're going to be keeping that token right there until we find yet again another city that is going to be able to take that from us as we move off it. Looking at the new tile we went to, there is a unique symbol here. It is a faction symbol. This particular area of the world is controlled by that particular faction. There is a track that's on your Argo sheet that I'll show you momentarily that shows you how to track your reputation among the different factions. Right down here shows the 3 different factions that are going to be part of Cycle 1. I'm not sure if they're going to change going into 2 or 3. They might add some, remove some, or have completely different factions moving into the next cycles. But for this particular cycle, they are right here. I'm going to horribly butcher these, I'm sure. It says Hornsworn, Labyrinthians, and the Minionians, which look like kind of Minotaur-type characters. We have a neutral standing with all of them right now. So I'm just going to mark zeros on all of these. It's going to change based on our interactions with the different factions through maybe story events, or if we ever encounter them in any of the cities or anything through our diplomacy technologies. This may adjust. I will tell you right now, if you ever get to the war area on one of the tracks, it will never go up again. Once you hit this mark, that's it. You are at war with that faction and it will never change. Of course, I'm not going to say never, because there might be something in the game that does change it, but for what it's worth, how I understand it is, if you ever do get here, that won't be allowing us to move up anymore. Now that we've explained a little bit about how that works, and of course, as you go up these tracks, you see +1 and +2 and -1 and -2. That's going to be, if you have to take maybe a roll or something, or to determine how your interaction works out, you're going to be adding potentially those numbers to the roll. Also, certain story moments are going to have how well you are with that faction is going to influence how the different story moment plays out in front of you. The only other symbol we have left on our tile is our adventure symbol. So we're going to mark off our adventure here in the tutorial, which looks like it's probably going to be the last one. And I didn't show that I marked off the second one when we read through that one. I apologize. But we are going to go into our third one, which is the Omega one, which would change potentially different things if you're up in some of the other ones. But of course, being the tutorial, it's already laid out what we're going to read. We found a merchant ship, and it does have the keyword crime, which we'll probably play into in just a second. The story says, the moods of the ship sour even more, as you need to enforce food and water rationing. Black ambrosia is not the only thing running low. Maybe the city ship can reach the shores of the island of the Bull. But if you don't find supplies soon, it may well be manned by a crew of corpses. As you ponder the consequences, a solitary squawk breaks the silence. Lookouts catch a few fleeting silhouettes looming on the horizon. Soon enough, you see them as well. Bright sails and slender bows. Breams from Corthin, great drafts signaling holds full of cargo. Food, perhaps. When they notice you, they turn around and flee, denying you the chance to explain yourselves. You are no pirates, but you are in desperate need. You urge Alcibiades to speed up. If A7 is marked, the chase reveals that damage suffered from the shipwreck sea was more extensive than you realized. Roll a d10 on a 1 to 7. Increased strain causes further damage. Lose 1 hull. 8+, the Morier are kind to you. This time, gain 1 Argos Fate, which is located up at the top here. This is a stat that if it gets to 10, we're going to have to read this. Again, I'm not sure. I'm not getting a lot of fate, probably similar to our Argonauts, is probably not a good thing. Sadly, or I should say maybe goodly, we don't have A7 marked, we have A8. But now notice, this is something that happened in the past, so those different choices we make are affecting how the game unfolds. Byroms are no match for the Argos. Soon you catch up to them, and they put up no fight. In truth, they surrender, like pups rolling onto their backs. With opulent outfits and statures to match the grandeur of their wealth, these merchants are sailing the Knossos to pay tribute to the almighty Minos. Though you make them a more than fair offer, they pointedly refuse. They want nothing to do with you, and would sooner see you starve than share even a barrel of their supplies. Super nice guys. Choose a party leader. So again, at this point, we could choose a new party leader if we wanted to, but hey, Roz is doing a great job. Let's keep her going. It says here, I can either choose one, you made them a lucrative offer and they still refused. You're no thieves, but your crew is starving. These merchants are wealthy enough and they won't miss a few barrels. Then push comes to shove, they'll float to Knossos on their bellies. Confiscate their supplies, mark A10, and then see a merchant ship supplies on the next page. Or 2, you're not pirates or thieves. Besides, you're fairly close to shore, and in the Knossos, you wouldn't want to make enemies here. Let them go, but ask for the map of the coast. See a merchant's ship maps on the next page. Oh my gosh, that's a huge choice here. I'm going to guess doing 1, I'm going to have a happier crew. But number 2, maybe I'll get more of the map exposed to me and be able to know where I'm going in this world. Wow, that's a tough choice. Roz has no wisdom and is full of courage. She's going to cheer on the people as they go for the merchant ship here. Why not? We're going to mark A10 on our sheet and flip this over. I have full faith in my crew and my Argonauts with the courage that we have from Roz that we'll be able to navigate the seas without a map. Who needs maps? We'll go to 8. We marked A10 and now let's check out the merchant ship supplies on the next page. Before we read this, there is something else I want to talk about. When you do choose a party leader, you'll want to make sure you give them this party or priority target token so that you can remember who is your party leader. So I'm actually going to place that on Roz's card. If we ever have to choose another party leader, of course, we can choose a different one. But at this point, I believe this party leader is going to stay until we're having to choose a new one. But we're going to move into a merchant ship supplies. Barbarios, you're no better than the Samakari scum, says one of the fat merchants when you order your crew to liberate them from some of their cargo. Everyone's got to eat, and we're the biggest fish here, snipes one of you. No, my friend, there is always bigger fish. We're going to gain 1 Argos fate, and our diplomacy is going to go down 1 for this particular faction. But look at this, the Hornsworn diplomacy is going to go up +1. Then it says, if A8 is marked, some of your crew have taken to heart your philosophy of the greater good. While you were confiscating the necessary supplies, they snuck aboard the Briums to take the rest. Unfortunately, all they could claim were some dead god's relics. I get to gain 1 monument resource and 1 additional Argos fate. Then we're going to return to the voyage phase. So I've adjusted our tracks down here for our diplomacy, given us a monument resource, and we now have 2 Argos fate. Now, of course, remember, if we get to 10, we'll have to read number 98, which I'm sure is not good. I'm going to spoil a little bit here. This is the other option we could have done. The only reason I'm showing you this is because I want to show you what this Strangers is. One of the other things which you may have saw on our sheet next to the Argos Fate was a box with a number with strangers in it. And you can add numbers to those. Strangers are not good. They're people that have maybe infiltrated your Argos and could be causing, for example, uproars, or maybe they're spreading their own ideological ideas, or they could sabotage different things. So having strangers on your ship is not a good thing from what I guess. Of course, I could be completely wrong, and I'm sure there may be good strangers, I don't know, but they are going to influence different things that happen in the story, potentially on our Argos sheet that shows us all the different new things that could happen. For example, if we ever have to read any of these, it might matter how many strangers we have, maybe are going to play a role into how those all play out. Of course, could be wrong, haven't played it yet. But just bear in mind, strangers are not a good thing. You don't really want them on your ship, and they're going to influence the way the game plays out for you. Now that we've completed our adventure, one of the tags was crime. And this is going to bring about these different node advancements. If we look at imprisonment, it had a keyword crime on it. So because we were able to resolve that mission or that adventure, I'm going to cross this off here. Now remember, when we get to 3, we're going to be unlocking the new ability that this has, and we're going to be putting down a little number here that corresponds to this particular card. If I can get to zoom in on that tiny, tiny number right there. And we're going to read that from our adventure book and find out more about Olympia's past. The next thing that's going to happen as part of our turn order is we get to develop that technology. And it was another battle technology, and this is the only one we have is our ranged weapons. So we now have access to this, which means we can now create ballistic guns and a petrified javelin if we have the resources. And now, because of that, we're able to lead to arrow barrage and siren armor. So we have the abilities to learn these coming up soon. Experimentation leads us to suspect that the hardened AE siren shell will make a great stopgap defense solution. All right, sounds like a plan. And I do have the requirement, and this will lead to advanced weapons and forced Kratos reactions. The other one is arrow barrage, reinforced spears and arrow tips, as well as synchronictic training allows ship-stationed warriors to slightly weaken the Aeon Trespass field of a primordial. And of course, that is going to lead us to crisis protocol and basic support equipment. And of course, on the back, these are going to help us. This is actually going to become an Argos ability. And yes, you do have the ability to look at these. So it's not that, unless, of course, like I said, you want to play where you don't know what's on the backside, which you totally could, which would be kind of cool as well. So this is going to be an Argos ability that is going to allow us to bring it into battle. The other one, I'm not sure what that does. Well, I'm sure it's going to give us armor of some kind. It allows us to make different types of armor. That's what the other one is. And of course, we could look at the armor in our decks as well, because we have tons of stuff that we can learn through here. These are just some of the items. This is just some of the items. There is an astronomical amount of items that you can get. During the advancement step, I showed you that you could craft weapons and armor and stuff as well if you have the resources. We haven't gotten to that in our tutorial yet, so we're moving into the final round. We're putting pretty much all of this together, minus the adventuring, because we have done those 3 adventures, so I don't think our next tile is going to have any adventures, but it does tell us that we have to travel to tile 27 according to this one. So we have our tile right here, and we do have to move our ship. So we're moving into, oh, it looks like the port. We have made it. We made it. But do notice there's multiple ways to go off this tile, which is most likely going to be the case as you're moving around on the world. It's not usually going to be a straight line like it has been for us. This is part of this faction. Oh, we're going to be gaining more doom moving into here too. So let's put this here. We'll move our little ship right there. And there are 3 different things we're going to have to deal with on this tile. After we move, we have to tick off our timeline. We are going to be ticking off T6 right here. And as you notice, it's going to be coming to 01. So this is the final day of the tutorial. Looking back over at our ship, the next thing we are going to do is we are going to do our exploration phase, which you have to do. So I just want you to be clear that you always have to move, you always have to mark off your timeline, and you always have to do the exploration, which is basically resolving your tile. So we are going to gain 1 Doom token, which we'll take and place, whoops, I dropped on the ground. We'll take this and we'll place this, flip the right side. I can't hold on to this thing. Okay, there we go. Oh, I got it. We're gonna place this onto our Doom card, which we now have 2 of. This is part of the faction, so if we do have anything that resolves that has to do with the faction, we'll be abiding by that. Nothing's going to take place on this. We do have our symbol here, where if we had any type of diplomacy technologies or anything where we could interact with this, we'd be able to do that as well. But one of the new things that's going to be introduced is this bottom part here. During the exploration step, which is what we're on right now, after resolving the exploration symbols, which we've already gained our Doom token, we're going to draw and resolve 2 stacks of exploration cards. So we've created our exploration deck. These are going to be cards that are going to be particular to what they tell you to do. So I've created a deck using cards 1 through 9, 13, 19, 23, 28 through 31. And you're going to see this little number down here when creating the decks. That is the number you're going to be looking for as you're creating this deck. Then you're going to shuffle this deck completely up. And after that, we're going to start drawing cards from this deck. How this works is we're going to draw 1 at a time and resolve them until we see a particular symbol. So the first card we draw is this one. It says Trade Post, gain 1 resource. Then, if friendly, gain 2 Tremere resources instead. Well, I'm not friendly to the particular faction that I'm in, so I'm only going to gain 1. Then the next thing we do is look at the symbol down here. It is a X symbol. If it's that, that means that we have ended the stack. So we only got 1 card from that stack. That's okay. We do get to gain this resource, so we're going to mark that down on our sheet. We're then going to draw a second stack of cards. And this one is here. It says Wreck. We're going to gain 2 more resources. If we are denounced, choose an Argonaut and it's going to gain 1 danger. Now, we're not renounced either. And we also have drawn that card. So we're going to draw another one just so I can show you the difference here. We've got another one. One of these has to not be an X symbol. Nope, these are all X symbols. Come on, there we go. So for example, if we've drawn this card first, we would deal with this particular thing, then we would draw another card and continue until we see that symbol. So at that point we'd be done, but we would gain the abilities on both of these cards. We resolve them one at a time. So we'd resolve this card, draw another one, resolve this card, it would be the end. And remember, these are the two we got, so I'm putting them in the side. So there are going to be multiple cards down here that do have the X symbol, and there's multiple cards that are going to allow us to redraw. Oh my gosh, there's not too many that allow us to redraw in this section. That's why I probably... the odds were not in my favor to draw a redraw card. Also, I want you to understand that as you draw these cards, this first stack, once it's resolved with the X symbol, you're not going to shuffle it back in until you draw the second stack. And even on top of that, there are going to be certain cards, even though they have this symbol, on the card somewhere it might tell you to not shuffle it back into this exploration deck until after, let's say, a battle has taken place on the timeline. Some of them are going to be removed permanently, and others might come back at another cycle or something of that nature. So make sure you read the card as to when you're supposed to shuffle it back into the deck. These two are going to be cycled back in. I'm going to gain my 3 resources, and that's the end of my exploration phase. I've given us 3 more of this resource, and this deck will be changing as you go through it, not only through story events and through other parts of the game, but also on the timeline as well. As you can see here, right here and here, it's telling us to remove and add new cards that are going to change what exactly this deck has. There's 3 different spots where this is going to change, and of course, going through the game itself will probably also change this deck. Remembering what our tile looks like, there's no adventure symbol and there's no timeline battle. So we're going to skip the expedition and encounter steps of those particular things, and we're going to move right into the advancement step. Now remember, there's no technologies, but remember the other step that you can do during the advancement step is to be able to craft weapons and armor and things of that nature. So we are going to look at our final core technology, the Argo Works. It says the Argo is a marvel of engineering, but there's no denying the fact that most of its systems are inactive or unknown to us. We need to start by setting up a production hub. So this is going to lead to trading solutions, and we're going to flip this over here, and it says, to stand a chance against the primordials, the smiths and priests of the Argo work tirelessly on new types of gear and new engineering solutions. During the advancement step, you can use available resources to craft gear cards using production technologies. Here are the 3 advancement cards that we have, and I've also picked out all the different items that we could potentially create based on the materials that we have on our ship. So quickly, let's look through what we have the ability to make. We could make another one of these siren teeth. We've seen this one already. It's going to take all of my 5 Tremere resources, so that's all the things I have, and then 2 muscle clusters, which I do have 3 of, so I'd be down to 1 muscle cluster. Another one is the siren blade. I can't make that because it takes 4 monument. Also, the boat mace takes 3 as well. We don't have that. We do have enough to make this because we have the infused mechanism, the raw ambrosia, and the tree, or the Tremere, sorry, which is going to be this Kratos Copies. We could make this. It says right here, to the dead gods do we raise our prayers. And this thing is going to give us 2 dice. It's only one-handed, and it gets +1 and does 1 of the power dice. It says down here, it is carving 1 and sacrifice. During the first ability window, you may gain +1 danger to be able to put 1 break token into the Kratos pool. So that's one possibility we could do. And with the ability down here, that carving 1, what that allows us to do is when you wound the primordial, I can test a wisdom and I have to get an 8 or higher. And on a success, I immediately gain the number of resources equal to the carving number. For example, this one is 1. And it's going to be non-core primordial resources from the body part card. Now, I do not get to multiply these based on the level. This is all going to be based on the actual card that we're using, which would be carving 1. Another thing I want people to keep in mind is we have 2 of these in our box. We can only craft 2. You can't craft 3 and just use another card to like as a placement holder for it. You can only craft what you actually have in the box. You can never craft more. We could also make a petrified javelin. There's 2 of those, which is right here. It's going to cost me 3 of the Tremeres and 5 of my raw ambrose, which isn't too bad. But if we look at the back, I want you to notice a few things on this card. First, you get to roll 2 dice. I get +1 and do 1 power dice, and it's one-handed. But it has a range of 2 to 4. So that means it cannot attack at range 1. You have to be at range 2 to 4. And cumbersome is interesting because during the second ability window, if I successfully wound with the weapon, I have to exhaust it, which means we're going to turn it to its side. And then we're going to treat this, though, of course, as a voluntary exhaust. So we have to actually do that when we hit with this particular weapon. It's kind of like throwing it at it and hitting it and sticking in there. To unexhaust a card, you have to spend your movement action or combat action, and that will unexhaust all exhausted equipment and some elements, such as Memnos cards and Titan abilities and so on. Other abilities, other game effects, of course, could allow you to unexhaust these. Maybe you have like another ability from your characters or something that's happened during the story that allows your character to do that, or maybe ability on your Titan to unexhaust cards. But once they're exhausted, you have to spend either your combat action or your movement action to unexhaust it to be able to begin to use it again. I think that's really cool because it does give some of these more powerful weapons a reason to have to think about if you want to bring them into battle, because you might not always be able to use them, along with some of those really powerful abilities. The final thing we can make with all the stuff we have is the Shipwreck Shield. And on the back here, it is 2 dice. It gives 0. It gives +1 to here. It has crit evade. Place 2 opening tokens in the Kratos pool. And it also has the 2 symbol over here. And this is going to allow us to reroll, and it says 2 here. Now remember, if you ever reroll something based on a card, you can only reroll a die ever once. So even if you reroll it based on a card, you're not going to be able to use your fate to reroll that die again. So these are all the things we could potentially make. So we'll have to figure out what is best for our group. We have enough materials to make 3 different things. We have 2 armament, 3 raw ambrose, and a muscle cluster. We do have 3 muscle clusters. Here, I'm going to go to our sheet so I can show you. We have here 2 armaments, 10 raw ambrosias, and 3 muscle clusters. So if we lower this to 2 and this to 0, we then can make one of our defense armors here, our Shipwreck Shield. I need 3 ambrosia, 1 muscle cluster, and 2 armament. So we do still need 3 ambrosia, so we're at 7. So we'll put that right there. And we should be at 8 of these. I did actually forget to put the number down after we did our exploration, so we do have 8 of those. So with that, we've made our Shipwreck Shield. We'll have to figure out who to give that to. I'm going to guess it's going to be Penelope because she already has some armor, so I think she might be really good at just getting a lot of armor. The next thing we could make is going to be, I'd love to make a couple of these ranged weapons, but we don't have any fleshy mantle, so I can't make a ballista gun. And I really think I'd like a couple of those in my possession instead of just one, so I'm not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to make some of these weapons. We could make a Kratos Copies because I have that infused mechanism, 3 and 2. So 3 more of these would bring us down to 4. We're going to use 2. Is it 2 of the other ones? 2 of these. So we're going to go to 6 on this. And then the last thing we're going to use is our infused mechanism, which is going to allow us to get one of these. We'll place this onto a character. I think that's going to go to Telebachus. He's going to gain that. We still have enough here to make even more stuff if we want to. Like we could make one of these siren teeth. We have enough. We have 6 of these left, so we have 5. And we have 2 muscle clusters. I have those right there. So each one of our characters could actually all have weapons, which would be really good. I can't make another one of these because I don't have the infused mechanism. And I can't make another one I can't make the Siren Blades, I don't have the Monument, and I don't have the Bolt Mace. So let's make another one of these. We're going to go down to 1 of these, and we're going to remove 2 more muscle clusters, bringing us to 0. And then we've made another one of these Siren Teeth that we're going to be able to give to Penelope, and we're awesome. Our characters are going to be rocking in the next part. So that was super cool. We made a shield and 2 more weapons. So this is where the board stands at the end of the tutorial. This is it. That is all you're going to see here for the tutorial. We're going to be moving into the actual game next. I will say that as you get ready for the beginning of this game, it does say in the book that we're going to return our Argos to its base stats. So I'll be gaining back all my crew and hull that we would normally start with. I do get to keep everything that I've gained through this tutorial going into the first mission from what I understand. Of course, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen to us. But any Argos fate and any strangers we have, we're going to remove those from the game as well. We're going to be starting our Argos kind of at a base set of stats here, having left this place. Now, I believe this is going to be our starting tile because it does tell us that we have to remove all of these and put them back in the box. I have a feeling we're never going to see these again, but I should never say never in a game like this. We could bring these tiles back, and we have to remove this tile, this token, of course. But as we leave this, depending on which direction we go, I'm sure we're going to place that there. We'll see how this all transpires once we start playing the full game of Aeon Trespass Odyssey. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell symbol so you know when more Aeon Trespass Odyssey comes out. If you are watching this particular tutorial over on the One Stop Co-op Shop, our journey here is going to end. But if you want to see more Aeon Trespass Odyssey, please check out my channel, Meet Me at the Table. I'll put a link to it in the description below. We'll be continuing our playthrough over there. I'm super excited to see where this game takes us. I love the progress and doom concept. I love how huge and expansive and important this journey phase is playing through this game. It's not just go to your next boss, go to your next battle, go to your next battle. This, I think, is going to be a huge component of this game, being able to maneuver around, do different adventures, complete different quests, gain these certain tokens to hopefully advance your story without advancing doom. Oh no, we don't want more doom, that's bad stuff. Also having different factions and stuff. There's so much at work in this game. I'm excited to see where it goes. Again, thank you so much for watching, and if you're excited to see Aeon Trespass Odyssey or anything else, then I need you to meet me at the table. Looking back at the tile we came from, we're going to place down this token that is going to symbol. I can't talk.